In this lesson, I'd like to teach you how to get started with some beginner jazz improvisation techniques on the guitar over the jazz standard Blue Bossa. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, Jamie Holroyd here, helping you learn jazz guitar. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here and you want a free structured beginner jazz guitar class, then please check out the link below to my free beginner jazz guitar course, which has got basically about an hour or two's worth of jazz guitar instructional material, free downloadable PDFs, all the kind of things that you need to get going with jazz guitar. In this class, we're basically doing something similar, but we're looking at some common guitaristic shapes and ideas that you can apply over Blue Bossa. If you'd like to get the PDF for this particular lesson, then please check the link below downstairs for details. And if you enjoy this lesson, then don't forget to click like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. When improvising, jazz musicians tend to use a combination of both scales and arpeggios. We're going to begin by looking at a C minor scale and some C minor shapes in the third position here. So the scale that we're going to be using for all these examples is actually called a C harmonic bebop scale or a C harmonic minor bebop scale, but I just really think of this as being a pitch collection in C minor. So there's a standard harmonic minor scale, but the problem with this scale is you've got this big jump, that big interval with those two notes. So if you basically add some chromatic notes there, it takes care of that problem and sounds much more jazzy, I think. So that's the first thing to learn, is the C harmonic minor bebop scale. So I'll play it slowly just so you can hear it. You can use that over the first half of the tune, over the first 8 bars, over the minor 2-5-1, it works fantastic. As well as over the first chord. And the second chord too, over the F minor, even though it's a C harmonic minor bebop scale. It works fine because you've got such a strong tonal center that's been established in this song. And we're going to discuss some more unique ways of playing over each chord as well. So that's kind of the first thing, is to learn that scale. Now for the 2-5-1 in D flat, E flat minor, A flat and D flat, which happens, we're going to be using the D flat major scale in this position. Now it kind of slides into the 9th position and then comes back down again. So if you don't know that, it's worthwhile doing the same thing. And you can create strong melodies with a major scale, so there's nothing wrong with using that there. So the basic kind of scale geography of this tune is going from the C harmonic minor bebop scale and the D flat major scale. So the first thing that we're going to work on is we're going to try and switch between those two scales. So what I'd like you to do is just practice ascending and descending of the harmonic minor scale over the first 8 bars, and then when you get to D flat major, we're going to try and switch to that. If you can do 8th notes, which I'm going to do, then that is the most common subdivision used by jazz musicians in soloing. However, if that's too complex to begin with, then you could always just start with quarter notes. The key is to have non-stop moving notes. Or maybe, as you will hear on the example, I stop for a beat or two, just because sometimes the scale transition aligns better with the chords, meaning that I don't have to change the scale halfway through to get to the next scale. That's a good exercise, but it's a bit more advanced than what we're doing here. So let's have a listen now to non-stop scales over the entire progression. playing scales non-stop like that can be tricky. So if this is all fairly new to you, then it's worthwhile just kind of, doing this without the backing or playing along with me to begin with. You could just literally play, the scales. Sometimes in one octave as well, just to develop dexterity. But what you want to go for with all these scales is just like non-stop like that. So you can just keep playing up and down the scale. D flat major scale, C harmonic minor scale, harmonic minor bebop scale. So it's going to give you dexterity by doing that, right? And you can split to one octave of the scale if you prefer the first octave, and then the first octave of D flat major. You could do the higher octave if you want, it doesn't matter. Sometimes that might even be better to start with one octave rather than the 2 octave span. But realistically, it's nice to cover the range of the instrument when you're improvising as well. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is look at some shapes, some beginner shapes which bring out the chord more. So let's have a listen to how the shapes sound against a loop. Okay, so what you heard there was some shapes against a loop. So what's going on there? So basically over the C minor chord, we're now going to try and bring out each of the chords more by using guide tones. So over a C minor 7th chord, we're now going to use the C minor triad, Ru, flat 3, 5. And then when it gets to F minor, we want to try and use this triad right here. And these are all kind of hopefully common guitaristic shapes. This C minor triad is just basically the top 3 notes of a bar chord. And then this F minor triad is like a D minor triad, moved up into 4th position. When it gets to a D minor 7 flat 5, we're going to be using the arpeggio there, a partial arpeggio. It's almost a diminished but not quite there. It's A flat, C and D. And then we're going to go to a G triad, which again is from a bar chord shape. And then we're going back to that C minor triad. So we have a C minor triad, F minor triad, D minor triad, G7 triad, C minor triad. And hopefully even without the chords, if I play those, you can already hear the harmony being outlined with just 3 notes over each chord. When you go to the 2-5-1 in D flat, we're using this E flat minor shape, which many of you guitar players will probably know from Sultans of Swing. So, you're playing off the chord there, and once again it's from a bar chord shape anyway. So, E flat minor triad, and then A flat triad, which is the same as G triad, just moved up, and then a D flat triad, which is the top half of a D flat bar chord. So 2-5-1 in D flat, E flat minor, A flat, D flat. Okay, so after that we're back to a minor 2-5-1, and we're using the same shapes as what we did for the first minor 2-5-1 there, which are all on the PDF. So let's play the video again and see if you can keep up playing the triads across all the chords there, just to kind of get them underneath your fingers so you can outline the chords. Hopefully now you'll feel confident with some of the fingerboard geography of this song. So what you hear most jazz musicians do is basically combine these two things together. They can go from one to the other, or they can basically kind of use an arpeggio or a guide tone to start a line and then go down a scale. So there, that was like a C minor guide tone starting that line, and then down a scale. That kind of thing. So that's a bit tricky to do, but it is what jazz musicians do. So I recommend when you begin, just trying to go from maybe one approach to another. So I'll try and play and talk about how you can combine some of these ideas. So let's maybe start with an arpeggio. Another arpeggio. Scale. As you can hear, that was kind of using more scales towards the end as well. And I was kind of going on to the next thing too. So, it's good to kind of stay in one position and really get to know it. But after a while, it's nice to basically, add some texture and hear the range of the instrument rather than just stay in that one position all of the time. So I'm now just going to give you a few examples of playing through the same thing as what we did, the rudimentary techniques to get round the C harmonic minor bebop scale and the D flat major scale, but further up the neck. So let's have a listen to both of those clips now. So once you've got those shapes underneath your fingers, I'd like you to try and do the same thing as what I just did there in position 3. And then when you've got that together, that's when you can start to combine them and go from one shape to another. And that's where you start to, sound even more fluent, even more controlled of what you're doing. So let's have a listen to that now. And, another thing as well you can do with these shapes is you can always play a half step into them. Or, this one, you're basically kind of in C minor. You can always use blues tones as well, like you can with this one down here. Lots of jazz musicians use blues sounds too. Or, you could just use passing notes into the guide tones too. So don't feel like you've got to always play them exactly as they are. You can play around them and use them as shapes, okay? Shape-based guitar playing. So let's try and use both of these fretboard positions together with some kind of chromatic approach notes going into each of the chords as well. So we'll start up here and we'll maybe go for some kind of blues ideas based off this shape. Hopefully that gives you some ideas about what you can do. So What I recommend you do is spend some time with these shapes, get used to them, playing both fingerboard positions, and see if you can craft a solo using some of these techniques to improvise over Blue Bossa.